Hello and welcome to our session today. I am Katie Holt with Smart World Digital, and we are talking about metrics behind the millions, what senior living prospects actually do online. What if you could tailor your marketing strategy based on the actual behaviors of thousands searching for senior living daily? Well, that's exactly what we're talking about today. We have Katharine Ross, the founder of seniorsguide.com, alongside senior digital strategist J.R. Blandon, who has spent 7 years analyzing user behavior and campaign performance on their platform. In this conversation, we are going to unpack exclusive data packed findings that reveal what is truly driving engagement and conversions and organic lift in senior living content. So, you're going to walk away with some proven strategies to amplify your digital marketing ROI. And it's not based on theory, it's going to be hard earned intelligence from the front lines of senior engagement. So, welcome, Katharine and JR. I'm so excited for our conversation today.
Yeah,
Thanks,
thank
Katie.
you.
We're
So,
looking forward to it too. It's always fun to look at things from a broader perspective and then drill down on how to put that into application.
absolutely, absolutely. And I think you guys come with so much data backed information with what seniorsguide.com has in terms of just the content you guys are doing. So let's just kick it off and tell us a little bit about just seniorsguide.com for anybody who doesn't know or isn't familiar with it or hasn't been to your site. Just give a quick overview of what the site is and what really makes you guys experts at having all of this data that we're going to be talking about today.
Sure thing. So seniorsguide.com has been around since 2001. It started off in a very regional footprint, but we're growing nationwide. And it has content that is programmed for every facet of a senior's life and for caregivers. And so we have content that entertains, content that educates, content that's specifically built to engage. And then we also partner with providers across the country to help them get visibility in front of the audience that's already on our site reading, or while they're doing those deep dives of research and that comparative journey they like to do when they come to evaluating senior living options.
Awesome. So you're writing content for families and seniors who are looking at healthy aging or considering communities or making kind of those later in life decisions around the family dynamics. Is that kind of accurate who your audience is?
That's definitely an aspect of our
Yeah.
audience. We're programming content regularly that speaks to anything. So we have a lot on technology, we have a lot on buying guides, we have a lot for just recipes, get a huge
hmm
amount of engagement on our site. And I think the reason for that is no matter what age you are, you want to thrive. Right. And so it's not just in the healthcare sphere or just in the senior living sphere. It's for every aspect of what they're doing in life.
Love that. Okay, I love that. So let's dive into the data, right? Because you both have analyzed millions of sessions across seniorsguide.com. What trends are you seeing in terms of how seniors and their family are actually navigating the websites today?
Yeah, kind of like what Catherine was speaking of. We have such a variety of content within our blog that we're seeing our visitors go there first, whether it's to read about what their Apple Watch does or to get the latest recipes on beets. Surprisingly, beets is a thing.
Crazy. I don't get that.
Right. They do that, and what we find out is they go from the blog, then they get into the heavy stuff, right? Then they're getting into what does assisted living look like for me or memory care. We notice that. And we also notice that seniors also go into rabbit holes. So they definitely love to go from the easy stuff and then get into our site, which does lead them into helpful rabbit holes.
Interesting. And it kind of start light and kind of like start to peel
Yeah,
on the layers of like, oh wait, maybe I should think about this.
Well, and
exactly.
the thing is, I think because we cover such broad strokes of different types of information, our brand is known, it's a trusted voice, and it builds that trust on the easy stuff. And then when the questions get more complicated or more emotionally driven, they love to read about experiences of others. So we see a lot of day of the life information being really intriguing. And then they end up on the provider profiles, right? Where they
Mhm.
want to see visuals, they want to see testimonials, they want to see that social proof that other families feel safe with this provider giving care to their loved ones. And so with our site, we've recently integrated where Google reviews are shown. And so you can get that social proof all in a brand that consumers are already trusting and find valuable.
Excellent. And kind of thinking about how the consumers are finding you, are they coming through? What channels are you seeing that they're coming through? Newsletters that you guys are putting out content? Are they finding you on Google? Like, how are they coming to the website? And I'm curious to understand, like you said, they get to that blog content. Are they coming to your homepage, or are you driving them straight to the blog?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So organically, right? Organic is probably one of our top channels, excuse me, that we drive traffic to. It's kind of easy to remember, right? Seniorsguide.com. But I guess the point is with the blog aspect, we also do, the social, the paid media and social. So even when they come into our site in the very front end, I mean, that topic blog, the bulletin is what we call it, that resonates to them and they just boom, click right
Right.
there. And then again, that content just drives home for them. And then again, our social, our newsletter, Catherine and ours, Tuesday takeaways definitely helps, drive that. And so, yeah, that's how we see it.
We have a national newsletter that seniors or their caregivers can opt in that goes out every month, kind of highlighting the things that we see are getting the most engagement on our site because that's consumer interest driven, right? And so we get a lot of traffic from that, which JR just mentioned, called the bulletin. And then our blog is so organically wired. It's interesting because some of the articles we wrote years ago will show up as a top article from the most recent month. And that
Yeah.
just shows to like the evergreen content that strikes a chord. One of the pieces of content recently that got a big spike was about buying shoes for diabetics. It doesn't sound like an exciting topic, right? But it's so needed and it was something we wrote a couple of years ago, and for some reason this May it blew up like crazy. And so it goes to that credibility that's established with Google and with AI and how that visibility happens. And then of
Sure.
course continuing the connection with folks through
Mm.
the ongoing newsletter. And I mean that's just good brand practice in general, right? You connect, you
Sure.
stay connected, you keep showing value, you keep showing them why this is a brand that can be trusted. Well, we do that with seniorsguide.com.
Love that. I love that. I want to talk a little bit about some shifts that I think we've heard about probably since I got into digital marketing, and it was this like mobile shift. I want to hear
Yeah.
from you guys. What are you guys seeing? How have mobile behaviors evolved over the past few years, especially with adult children and older users?
Yeah, so it's interesting because, like you, Katie, I've been in digital marketing for more decades than I'd like to admit, right?
Yeah.
But mobile traffic for seniorsguide.com eclipsed desktop traffic for the first time in 2025.
Okay.
Every other year, mobile had been at that 40 to 45% of traffic. This year, it hit 60% of our traffic. And I think that's indicative of where seniors are going as far as how they're interacting online. And I think that's something for providers to be very aware of. If they're not seeing that their traffic is at that level mobily right now, they will in the near future. And so they're
Hmm.
going to want to make sure that their site is mobily responsive. And if it's not, then let's make sure those landing pages for your marketing campaigns are mobily responsive so that regardless of screen size, when someone comes to your online offerings, that experience is seamless and valuable for them.
Yeah, we're seeing 54% of new users coming from mobile. So, right, what we're seeing is that cell phone is that's the gateway, right? And to Catherine's point, we, you know, developed and made sure that our site was, mobile friendly, but not just both for the adult, the adult child, but for also the seniors. Because I mean, honestly, that's the majority of our new traffic are the seniors, and they're navigating. And so to have that percentage so high is letting us know that, hey, that cell phone is the gateway, and it's going to become the gateway for a lot of the providers and other services out there.
Yeah. And I feel like since I got into digital marketing, like when I first got into digital marketing, it was like the mobile evolution is coming, right?
Hmm.
And it's like finally here in the senior living industry. And I think that's so interesting to see such a jump for your own site traffic. And if we think about providers and operators out there who are going, wait a second, is my site mobily responsive, or how much traffic is coming from mobile to my site? Just can you touch on like maybe how they can find that data? Because you guys aren't pulling these numbers out of thin air. I know you guys are
Right.
tracking all the analytics. Like, what are some tips you could give around like how would an operator like even understand how much traffic's coming to their current website from mobile?
Well, on the where to find the traffic numbers, I'm going to toss that to JR. But to show
All right.
people how to check if their site is mobile, it's really easy to do. And I'm going to share my screen for a minute. And so you can see you're on our homepage right here. All you have to do is shorten the screen size. And then you can see how do the elements in the page stack up? Do they
Hmm.
still stack up in a usable way that's easy to read? Again, seniors, they are likely to zoom in on font sizes for their phones and whatnot. So you want to make sure it's readable, it's engaging, and it still operates in a great way.
Great,
Yeah,
great
Another
tip.
way to check it is to just get on your phone and check your website from there. So you can
pretty
do
much.
both of those tests to see what the UI looks like.
Awesome.
Right. And then if you want to get into the weeds about how many, what percentage or what's the volume look like, we definitely utilize Google Analytics for GA4. And, we definitely look at that left-hand side, that tech side, and it breaks down, what desktop, mobile, and TV and all the other, verticals. But that's where we really, see that leap, and then we get in the weeds to figure out, what devices are they using. But, for everybody who's really wanting to see that data, and those numbers, it'll be there. GA4 is probably going to be the best place to see that.
Oh yeah, you want to talk about rabbit trails? Let's talk about data rabbit trails in GA4. I mean, there's a lot of really rich consumer data for your website in that tool.
For sure.
Looking at devices, yeah, let's no want to get into like all the different devices, but that's a great
Right.
great tip. While we're talking about kind of the data and GA4, I'm curious to hear from you. Like, are there any noticeable patterns about when people engage, like time of day of week, or anything from like a marketer's perspective that you feel like
Yeah.
that day parting analysis is important or interesting?
Yeah, but we noticed on our site, we have that like 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. I mean, we see the most sessions happen right there, at that time. The peak is from 1 p.m. to that 3 p.m. That could be for several, right, for several different reasons, Somebody sitting at lunch, having that time to do the research.
Mhm.
We've probably all been there to be like, I need to get this off my mind. Let me go ahead and use this time to do the research. Ultimately, too, is that, it's that window of time that they could contact the providers that we also have on our site. They can call, they can drop a email and have that communication. But that is the pattern that we've seen in the last 12 months. So it's definitely that 9 to 4 crew that is definitely coming in and looking to our site.
That's interesting as I think about like who's online and searching during that time. Is it the adult child influencers, or are the seniors kind of filling their day with perusing and just self-education online?
I think it's both. And I think
Yeah,
Okay.
because the nature of our site is such a front door to research, right?
right.
Yeah.
What I hear from providers is active time on their site can be different than the active time on our site. But I think it's important for them to know about our site's active time because we are such a first point of contact for research. That's when your marketing programs should be available and visible, right? You want
Yeah.
to be out there when they're doing their initial research as much as you are when they're down the funnel a little bit.
Yeah, that's top of funnel, right? Like you guys are providing lifestyle content
Yes.
and they may not
Yeah.
know they're looking or they may not have thought about it, but then something that they see on your site sparks interest. They start exploring like, oh, what communities near me? Then these families kind of slowly step themselves through the consideration part of the funnel. So that's a great point. It's always interesting to do day parting. I think it does vary for providers. And when folks are looking more seriously at a community's website and making that decision point of should I make an inquiry, schedule a tour, those types of things is definitely a different stage of the journey. So I imagine Google Analytics for day parting analysis. Do you guys go into that? Do you have any other tools that you use for looking at like day of week and time of day?
Like when we get into the whole social aspect of things in our marketing, we will definitely look in those UIs to see, what time people are interacting. So yeah, we kind of use a mix. It's a blend, especially like I said, when we're sticking into that paid aspect of our marketing. We definitely like to utilize those UIs to determine, hey, when's a good time to start, posting or definitely commenting on posts. And of course, we want those times that people are actually on, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will say Google Ads, Meta, Facebook's ads, if you're doing anything like that, they do have some of that day parting reporting, like you mentioned, the
100%.
UIs or the user interfaces for those platforms can be really data rich information for
Yes.
providers to look at for sure. So I love that you guys are like doing the holistic approach here because like everything you guys are talking about doing from the data and analysis and the content is a holistic approach of digital best practices that does apply to what communities and operators should be looking at for their own digital strategies. So, really
Yeah.
great tips here. I want to kind of shift a little bit. I want to talk about content because you brought up content around beets, which I went, oh, is this the new superfood? Because I've seen a lot of content myself on beets. So I'm like,
Right, right.
what's the trend there? Or you talked about the diabetic shoes. So tell me what is some content you guys are seeing that is like consistently performing well for seniorsguide.com, and then maybe do you have any theories on why or any maybe direct feedback on why that content continues to perform really well?
Yeah, so the content that we see that are just like our I don't want to say pillars because I think that gets overused a lot in digital marketing, but the areas that have been strong for the last decade include recipes, and that's where beets have seen a huge insurgent. And it's not because we've done a ton of beet recipes. It's just
Right.
that the ones that we have are outstripping everything else. We did have a watermelon salad go kind of crazy this July, and so that doesn't surprise me too much. It sounds delicious when I hear it. The other evergreen content that folks love is stuff around pets. What
Mm-hmm.
pets are great for seniors, what pets are great for a senior living community, what type of pet is lower maintenance but great companionship. And that doesn't surprise me. I see that engagement online. I mean, how many cat videos have all of us kind of gone down the rabbit hole of watching? I think the takeaway for providers on that is if you are pet friendly, make sure that's something you mention in text, but also shows up in your visuals of your community.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is how to guides. Folks love to go to the internet to figure out how to do stuff. And if it's a how-to guide that relates to an offering you have, if you have gardening as a hobby in your community, maybe you do some how-tos about specific plants or nurturing that. And then it's a brand extension of your own content, but relating to folks in an area they have passion for. And then technology. And that's another area where seniors are interested and engaged. The group that's coming into retirement living right now, they were in the workforce with computers, they were in the workforce with the internet. And so tech isn't foreign to them, and a lot
Right.
of them want to stay on top of it. We did a recent article about how seniors could use ChatGPT, and oh my gosh, the engagement was so much fun. And our editor, used her animal, her dog Newt, to do a action figure, and it's
Mm.
adorable, and it spoke to pets and technology and was like a triple score win for content.
Nice. I love that. I just I think there's so many facets when we say content and when we talk about content marketing. I was like, content marketing is a big term. It can mean a lot of
Yeah.
different things, but really speaking to those kind of thematic areas that you talked about that are like always evergreen and interest, hobbies, tech. Everybody loves their pets. I have my pet on my lap right now, like,
Right.
so, and recipes, we all love to eat. Everybody needs a good recipe.
Yeah.
Are there any types of content that you see that is maybe generating more like qualified leads, maybe deeper in the funnel or closer to that buying decision? Is there any content in those kind of decision making areas that you're seeing really is resonating or trending in any sort of way?
Yeah, I think the content that brings those qualified leads are the ones that provide value at the end of the day. I know that's like a term that's thrown around now very loosely, but honestly, like the value of the content is what brings the qualified leads. Catherine just gave an example, right? Let's say, our providers not just putting in text, right? That they are pet friendly, but showing images of, of the residents enjoying their animals and their pets during the, while they're staying. That's value to the senior looking for the adult child, the how-to guides, how to have these tough conversations maybe with mom and dad. That's value. And that will drive those qualified leads. And we do our best to do that whole value throughout the organic, the blog, and even during while we're doing our paid media.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I think showing up for this audience with value add content and information and resources helps the decision making process, whether they're finding that information from seniorsguide.com or a provider's website. I think there's just so much education that happens when somebody starts to enter this, phase of their life for themselves or for a loved one, that providing content that helps them navigate that decision is, I think important, but it's also got to resonate with where they're at in their journey.
That makes
Well,
sense?
and to your point, everyone wants to self-lead their research. No one wants to feel sold to or,
Right.
guided down a sales funnel the way that we talk about. At the
Yeah.
same point, a more educated consumer is a better qualified consumer. And so that's one of the big reasons that on our site we try to provide as much education around all of these things as we can. We know that adult kids are worried about security, safety, and healthcare around their parents, but the parents are concerned about lifestyle and like what it's actually like to live in a community. We're
Right.
talking about a
Mhm.
major transition for the entire family. And the more that a provider's content can share real experiences of what it's like for people to move in or use examples of success stories on where chronic challenges have become workable inside community life, I think that's going to build trust, build value, like JR was talking about, and create more qualified leads for the provider.
Yeah, empowerment comes from the education,
Yes.
right? So if we can do that as marketers, content writers, those leads is what we're calling them right now, but those a family, that person's, staying in that community is going to feel comfortable, empowered that they've made the correct decision. And then ultimately, I think that's all we want to really do in this industry is, give our families, that power and that comfort, during their life.
No, JR, I think that like you're absolutely spot on around empowerment and educating the families and the folks that are looking because they don't know, especially if they're closer to a decision making process, they may be a little bit stressed and emotional in
Right.
that decision. So there's a lot of different touch points that content can connect with the families and meet them where they are in their journey. And as we think about communities and their content plans and providers in their like maybe corporate approach to doing content digitally, what are some tools or recommendations you guys have for like helping them understand like where do I start with like providing content on my own website?
Yeah. One of the tools that I'll throw one of them, Google Trends, ultimately will be a really good starting point. At that point, you can type in "are pets trending in assisted living, and that will help you figure out that answer. But the nice part about Google Trends, it also gives you other options and other questions, right? That can help now craft that content, that you're making. One more I'll throw out, a simple Google search. Just throw one in there. Just go into Google, type in a question, and see what comes back. And if it doesn't resonate with you with you, then there's an opportunity to really either craft one, that would help, because ultimately, if it doesn't resonate with you, I feel there might be others that might feel the same way, and you can help that way.
Well, and if you see a certain subject matter trending, whether it's through Google Trends or through your social meta post or something like that, you can cross-pollinate that. Realize that if the subject has value, it has value for your email campaigns.
Mhm.
And it has value on building that education and empowerment as you email folks that are considering moving into your community. Maybe it's something that can help build trust there. And if you ever find yourself at a loss on what content to use in email campaigns, you can certainly come to seniorsguide.com, look at our articles, see if there's anything there that you could drip out in an email. Of course, attribute it to us, but it gives you that really soft, helpful way to reach out and connect with families that are on the fence or still considering their decisions.
Well, and
Yeah,
I love that offer, Catherine, because seniorsguide.com is a third party kind of neutral platform with all the content you guys are putting out. You're a resource already out there that's not a third party referral source or a
yeah,
competitor source that could be used and leveraged in nurturing prospects that are in the database via email, using on social, and just reinforces that trust factor of like, hey, we're not going to just push promotional content of our community. We're going to actually provide you other things, third party validation that what we're saying, you know, here's a really great recipe from this great website and
yeah,
those types of that third party validation. I think like just showcases that I want to be a resource to you as a family
right,
that we're talking to.
Well, and we know beet recipes seem to be of interest. So feel free to go check those out. Another
right,
way of doing this is if, especially in the memory care space, feel free to grab an article from the Alzheimer's organization, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
And send that out. Again, it's not competitive for you and it shows compassionate help and it helps support them along their decision making with a third party voice.
Absolutely. It really is about putting those families and their needs and their interests first in terms of how you're
yeah,
showing up to help them. I'm going to shift a little bit. We talked about some like ways that you guys are driving traffic to your site. You touched on paid, and a lot of operators and providers are using paid search, Google Ads, and maybe some of the other platforms that are out there. Google Ads tends to be like the number one that everybody
hmm
focuses on. Tell us if you guys have any tips around avoiding low quality traffic. It's a topic we talk with our clients about all the time, but do you have any like
right.
tips or tricks around like making sure you're driving quality leads from your paid strategy?
Yeah, so the low quality leads, the bots, that has been, right, that ancient, at this time, that puzzle, right? So I'm going to give you some things that we do here at seniorsguide.com, and just keep in mind, just go ahead and contact your professional vendor for your help. Again, this is what we do specifically for Google Ads and Performance Max, right? What we like to do is we're going to feed the algorithm the right signals, the right stuff. So what does that mean? We make sure our enhanced conversions are set up correctly, because ultimately, like what Google does is bad tracking leads to bad leads, right?
I applaud that 100%.
So this appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. The second part is use clean customer lists, right? Like just upload quality customer match to allow Google to find real people, real prospects, right? Not the bots. So and then the third, we add filters and we monitor GA4. Again, we do lean on it. I mean, Google product, right? You might as well use a Google product, but we exclude these risky placements. We watch for any red flags in GA4, like those odd spikes that you might see from Performance Max, and also those 0-second visits. We definitely have those triggers. So I would recommend anybody just go on your GA4, create those filters, but not just create them, also send those notifications that will come to your email. And then you'll be able to get those quick notifications and you can react if you need to or monitor your GA4. So hopefully those little tidbits that we do, can help.
Yeah, no, those are great tips. And the customer segmentation, the structured data, knowing that we're putting good data into any of the digital systems, super important.
Right.
And then making sure we are tracking conversions. We certainly recommend all of that. Performance Max is a newer campaign type in Google Ads and certainly has, kind of required us to be more intentional about how we're leveraging
Yeah,
that paid
exactly.
strategy.
Right.
Okay. Talking about like our providers and community marketers and tailoring their messaging to the different audience types. What are some tips or suggestions that you have when it comes to creating messaging and content for the different levels of care or the different audiences and decision makers in this industry?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting time in the industry right now because we have so many different generations navigating senior living together, right? We
Mm.
have the boomers who have one way of digesting media and digesting messaging. And again, they're looking for thriving, exciting lifestyles. Even when they're higher in acuity for care needs, they still want to know that they're going to thrive there in a fun way, right? Then you have Gen Xers and millennials who tend to be in that adult kid segment. And then we even have some Gen Zs coming in and making some decisions around senior living. So, in your messaging in general, you always have to start with knowing which audience are you targeting with this message. And you think about the emotional reason someone makes a choice, which is different for each and every care level and different for each of those generations I just highlighted. And then think through what they need to hear, right? And so the seniors need to know how they're going to thrive inside your walls and what that looks like. And is it great food? Is it unique activities? Is it a community of friends that will be available for social support? And we all know how bad isolation is to a senior's health. However, if they can have the hope of a social network just being next door, there's so much value in that when that's positioned in a fun way. And then for the adult kids, they're looking for that safety, that security, but also that emotional reassurance that making these decisions can be guilt free.
Mm.
And that's such a big piece of it for adult kids. They feel guilty. They feel like they're not doing enough. And I think if we can figure out how to reassure them that they are in the messaging with compassion and help them know how to do enough, what does enough look like, and tips on staying connected with their parents, but becoming that fun relative again, not the caregiver, right? Not the person with the hard conversations constantly, but the person that can just enjoy someone's company. So that just kind of highlights some top level ideas. Obviously, when you're looking at websites, you've got to speak to both audiences in a way that doesn't patronize the seniors.
Right.
And that's a very nuanced approach. I see a lot of providers doing it well, and they do it well by structuring the conversation directly at the senior and then kind of doing and your kids will love hearing that so that you're not doing that patronizing piece that can
Yeah.
happen in our industry so easily.
Oh, what a great like tip. Like, and your kids will love hearing that, like that little hook in for those adult child influencers and loved ones who are looking. What about the data? What are common mistakes that you are seeing senior living professionals make when it comes to their marketing based on the data?
Katie, in short, overreacting to like that singular data point. Give you an example of one, it's the bounce rate, right? I think for me, I look at a bounce rate as a vanity data point, and it's going to probably be an argument, but and
Well, real quick, tell us what bounce rate is for anybody who's like watching this and like, I don't know.
yeah. Bounce rate is that metric that tells you how fast somebody leaves a certain page of your site. give you an example. You have a form fill, right? And then all of that bounce rate's at 60%. Just throwing out numbers here. And some of that data point, some might look, that's high. But for us, we look, well, if it's 60%, we have a form fill. What is the form fill completion rate? Is that high? Because that just means to say, we might have a really good form fill. They're filling out their information very quickly. They're getting what they want, and then they leave, right? But for some, it's that overreacting, right? That's just one. But what we like to do is not just look at that singular data point. We just like to look at long-term trends and seeing how that goes, because I just threw out the bounce rate as one, but there's multiple, data points that people look at, but it's not overreacting, I guess this is short, right? And what we're starting to see the common mistakes is using those heavy industry jargon, literally without any explanation, right? And that it's still a mistake that we see within the digital marketing, whether we get excited of talking about certain topics and we're throwing them out, but we try not to do that, right? And then using generic phrases. That's one of those things that happens, most common is those generic phrases. And they're like, oh, okay, yeah, I
That's
got it.
in retirement living. That's about as generic as it gets, right?
Right, exactly, right? Things like that. We could list a few, but that's one of them. But Catherine and I and the team here, what we see is that disregarding of the emotional journey that takes the family from moving, into the community. And it doesn't matter what acuity, right? That's still an emotional. I think Catherine, I'm not going to lie, gave me a little goosebumps because me being in that stage of my life with my family, I'm the adult child, right? So when I am looking at the marketing aspect of senior living and the senior living industry to the content, if it's emotionless, it doesn't do anything for me because this is an emotional journey, right?
Right.
So I think that's one of the common mistakes that we definitely see, and that's just to list out a few of them.
Those are great points. And looking at the data holistically and long-term trends, I do think is something to really be mindful of. There are seasons in this industry
Correct. Yeah.
that are going to impact site traffic, site conversion, your leads, your tours, all of those things. So not overreacting. I agree. There's, you see a little spike for that one moment. It's like, wait, let's not panic. Let's go figure out what's happening and let's figure
Correct.
out, are we in a seasonal shift? Is there something else deeper going on?
Well, and on the flip side of that, Katie, if you see a good data point, you know, don't look at it just singularly as successful. Wait for the trend to be shown.
Right. Good
Recently,
point.
one of the data points that surprised me and excited me is that our click to call percentage went up substantially. Like it increased by, I want to say like 60% for second quarter this year, which
Okay.
means people are more inclined to click through a phone number from the mobile, right, to connect directly with a provider. And that's an exciting statistic to see for a singular quarter. I want to see if it keeps showing up. I love
Yeah.
that trend, but I don't know that it'll stay around. So I'm not going to overreact to it in the moment.
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, I always use the phrase, is it statistically significant? And
Mm.
what does that mean? Have we driven enough traffic? Do we have more than one conversion on this journey point? And
Mm.
have we spent a statistically significant amount of money? If we've spent, $100, maybe it's not statistically significant. It's a lot of money, but to generate a new lead in this industry, $100 would be pretty low. Like we want to make sure we're
Right.
spending we have the right amount of money to generate the quality leads that we need. And so you got to look at all of those data points. It's the dollars,
All of them.
traffic, the conversion. We even track lost leads and lost lead reasons from
Yeah.
the sales teams with our clients, just because that's a data point that then comes back to the traffic strategy. If we've got a lot of them financially unqualified, we're getting a lot of that junk traffic. We got to come back to what are we driving traffic to? So what about when something that like specific to seniorsguide.com, what do you think providers are overlooking that really shouldn't be overlooking when it comes to seniorsguide.com?
Well, the first thing is that we're not an aggregator. We don't take part in any type of data wall or data sharing. If someone comes into our site and is interested in talking to a singular provider, they are only connected with that singular provider. And that's just creating the respectful experience JR or I would want if we're doing research for our own parents. But beyond
Mm.
that, we have customized solutions based on care levels and the individual community needs. And being that we are an internet listing site combined with a really robust library of editorial content, we're able to nurture brand presence and top of the funnel awareness while bringing it through the research journey and have points of folks connecting directly with providers the way they want to. And we connect folks with providers through click to calls, through website traffic, and then, of course, through form fills. The website traffic that we send to providers tends to be at a higher engagement rate than other traffic sources. And so it shows that buying intent is there. The other thing is that we will address a memory care community in a way that's very different than an active adult community. And
Mm.
those content journeys on our site are different for those two different types of communities. And that is applicable across the care spectrum. And I'm getting into the weeds a little bit too much, so I apologize for that. But we are just passionate about providing our audience with good, concrete information to make their best decisions around aging and care while providing providers with a good ROI on their investment with us. And so we have a lot of fun figuring out how to do both of those things every day.
I do want to add one thing. I don't think people realize that we have a national audience already through our articles and our content. I think the one missing piece is to find those providers across the nation, right? So that's why we're always looking for the right partners to partner with, because we have the audience. It's there. Just need the partners to showcase.
Okay. Well, we will make sure that anybody watching today's video has, direct access to you guys if they are interested in learning about getting their communities listed on Seniors Guide. But just tell us real quick, like, what does that look like? Because then I want to ask some future looking questions and then we'll wrap up. So how can they get in touch with you if they're interested in listing their communities on your site?
Sure. So I'm on LinkedIn, Katharine Ross, and
Okay.
they can just DM me and I will make sure they get with the right team members, or they can visit our site, seniorsguide.com, and there's information available there to get in touch with us.
Yeah, same. I'm on LinkedIn, and like Catherine said, we'll go ahead and point you in the right direction.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, last touch point I want to have with you guys, just because content is such a wide category and is changing rapidly right now with AI.
Right.
So what impact do you think AI and algorithm changes is going to have going forward in this industry?
Yeah. Well, we have this discussion, I would say, daily here. The impact AI has is how people search and how people gather their information. It's just, I mean, we probably all, everybody listening and us three here use ChatGPT one way or another and probably ask it a question and then boom, you get your answer. My point is we are seeing a shift on how information is now being digested. So which means for us is your content, your marketing, are you meeting people where they are? So, it's probably an all known fact now, right? With content, is your top paragraph answering the question right away? Because essentially that's what's probably being looked at by the AIs, right? Is your marketing strategy, your paid marketing strategy, is that focused, those keywords, that the copy, are you being AI friendly? I mean, not for nothing, Google is still king for now, but it's slowly going to start losing, and people are slowly going to start using the chat GPTs on their phones, right? On their voice, on the Alexa devices. What comes up when they say, "Hey Alexa" or "Hey Google"? where's an assisted living near me? What comes up?
Yeah. I think AI is making a huge impact very rapidly. I think it's constantly changing. By the time
Yeah.
we finish today and somebody's watching this,
Right.
it's probably changed from what would be best practice today. And so I agree with you. Like you've got to be looking at the content as it answering those questions. I think it's a great place to start when it comes to the impact of AI on the content. Katharine, final question. You've served in this industry for over 24 years, or is there anything you are still get surprised by with online behavior?
Yes, seniors read a lot and watch the entire video. Their completion rates on both of those things outstrip everybody else's. I have the attention span of a gnat. I fast forward through TikToks on a regular basis because they don't go fast enough for me. And
Hmm.
yet, a senior will watch an entire bit. They want all of the information. And I think that's a double-edged sword, right? It means that you need to speak to everything that's on their mind in the best way that you can. It also means that they could be susceptible to false information. And that's where AI causes me concern. I think we serve the most vulnerable population out there. And one of the things we take seriously at Seniors Guide is teaching seniors how to avoid scams and other things like that. And AI is a huge contributor to that. So, as we as professionals in the senior living space continue to learn how to use AI, let's make sure we're respecting our audience as we do.
Great closing tip, respecting our audience. And I will just add that I hope marketers who are learning and loving to learn have made it all the way through the end of our time together, because you guys have provided so many great nuggets around content marketing, consumer behavior in this industry, and ways to really shape and think how providers are going about putting content on their own websites or even partnering with Seniors Guide. So thank you all so much, and congratulations to our audience who made it to the end and consuming
Yay.
this. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you, Katharine. Thank you, JR. And we will put all their contact information along with this video.
Thanks,
Awesome. Thank
Katie.
you, Katie.